place that anybody
we
listens.
are live.
Hello,
Hello,
Facebook viewers and YouTube
Facebook.
viewers. I'm here, Andy Humm, with Rob
Hello,
Shooter.
Rob Shooter. Anne's off today.
Yes, she is, and we've got a jam-packed show, so brace yourselves. You're very brave to tune in and listen to all this. I had a boyfriend who would never watch this show because it was on only at 11 o'clock at night. We didn't even have a VCR. And he said, I can't listen to this stuff before I go to bed. It just upsets me too much. But we have some good news as well.
We try. We have lots of entertainment news, and we have some good news in places where you wouldn't think good news was happening.
There are a lot of brave people out there. And what a week it was for demonstrating and all that stuff.
We were there, the two of us. We were there. I was there, and it was really inspiring. It was really inspiring.
We're counting down to just about to blast off.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
And I'm Rob Shooter.
Welcome, Rob, sitting in for Anne.
It's been a minute. I thoroughly enjoy jumping in. I'm no Anne, but it's fun to be here.
Oh, stop.
An hour with you every so often.
And, since you mentioned Anne, we had a little tape of her from last week while she's away. While she was at the demonstration against, ACT UP's 20th anniversary thing. So let's run that little videotape of Anne.
Sorry I'm not there this week, but I'm out on the streets today on Saturday with all these groups going after Trump and Musk. Come join us.
That's the message. Come join us. So let's get to this week's headlines. Yesterday we sadly learned of the death of Bill Finn, pioneering composer of falsettos and other profound gay Broadway musicals. He has died at the age of 73.
Too young. And more than 1 million people marched in hands-off protests all around the world, we can say, including over 1,500 actions nationwide.
Including us.
We were there.
I'm going to introduce you to our hero of the week, a New York State education official standing up to Trump's threat of the loss of federal funds for embracing diversity.
Hero of the week. I love that segment. And Trump has directed multiple federal agencies to get revenge on Maine's governor who stood up to him to support trans rights.
Yes, Trump attacks families led by non-heterosexual parents in his proclamation against child abuse.
And 60 Minutes had an amazing report on the wrongful imprisoned in El Salvador, including the picture of a gay makeup artist that everybody is talking about. This is an extraordinary piece of news gathering. It was amazing.
Yes, hate speech based on gender identity is no longer barred on YouTube.
Elton John's AIDS Foundation has been banned in Russia, which has the highest HIV rates in Europe.
$125 million in federal funds for researching LGBTQ health is rescinded by Trump. Some researchers are suing, and there's a bloodbath at the CDC and FDA, which is going to endanger public health for all of us.
It's going to endanger for all of us. King Holmes, a world leader in the prevention and treatment. King Holmes, a world leader in the prevention and treatment of STIs has died.
Interesting character. And we're going to review a play about a transgender woman coming out to her ultra-Orthodox father. And I also want to wish a happy birthday to Chris Cooper, who sometimes fills in on this show. He has a birthday today when we're taping.
Happy birthday.
So let's start with the hands-off demonstrations nationwide. I mean, look, we got a scene from they were everywhere, 1,500 places. Look at Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Massive crowds. So massive crowds in the big cities, but the small towns, Asheville, North Carolina. The next slide, please. Look at that. I'm so impressed by that. That people came out. People came out everywhere. And then we were in New York at the Hands Off demo. New York says hands off, and people were saying hands off to everything. So this was exponentially larger than the demonstrations last week, and it's building. Now, what I worry about, of course, and we have other pictures there from, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. Well, that's what we have to show. We worry about, that there'll be a crackdown on demonstrating and all that kind of stuff coming down the pike.
Well, I think that's what made it so extraordinary. I was there with friends, and I was overwhelmed at how many people showed up. I wasn't expecting that, Andy.
The cops weren't expecting it either. They had 44 cops in New York for 100,000 people.
Right.
And the comment of the cops was, they were very well behaved, and we weren't expecting this.
Nobody was expecting it, including people I think that were out there demonstrating. What changed? What changed?
What changed because we did this?
Yeah.
Us. That it changes us. And somebody said, oh, everybody should have gone to Washington because we have to go against Trump. No, everybody showed up in where they live. And every elected official where you live saw this, whether they're Republican, who should be crapping themselves, or Democrats who aren't doing enough, saw that we're out there and we're angry and you better do something and things better change.
Yeah, there's something
that's my feeling.
I think you're right. There's something that's happening. I saw yesterday that for the first time since the election, people are watching MSNBC and CNN again. Their numbers are the highest since the election. People are tuning back in after the election. I think so many people were so hurt. We watched Turner Classic Movies for a couple of weeks, but now people are getting engaged again. Personally, Andy, I sort of took a back seat for a few weeks. I didn't want to deal with any of this, and now I'm fired up.
Now we're fired up, and there was a complaint that it was the demonstrations skewed older. A lot of people who were involved in the movements of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. A lot of us were there, but when I got to the end of the march in New York, look at what I saw on a street corner.
This is my favorite video of the week. Wow. Hands off our future.
So, okay, enough of that.
It's great.
Hands off our future. And they didn't stop. They went on for an hour.
It's great. It's
just
great.
Chanting, and they were so intense.
Yeah.
And none of them was over the age of 10.
Right. And they came up with that, hands off. It's such a good expression because you can add your own few words at the end and whatever you were feeling. And
there were so many different issues there. Yeah. So many different issues, and we all got along. We didn't fight with each other. Thank God there was no rally in New York. We had to listen to speeches because we know why we're out there.
It was a great day. Honestly, get involved. If you have been resisting this, I know I have. Something's changed.
Yes.
And I think you're right, Andy. I think you're right about what it is.
We have to. Okay. Now, again, we got the very sad news this week that William Finn, a friend of the show and a pioneering gay composer on Broadway, has died at the age of 73. People know him from, we got a slide here. First time I saw his work, wasn't his first work, was March of the Falsettos.
Legendary.
In the early 80s. Bringing gay stuff. This is a sung-through musical about a family with, a guy's gay and he's got a kid and he's got his ex-wife and all that stuff. It was such a revelation to see that thing. And they combined it into something called Falsettos, which other plays, and of course he explored AIDS themes as well.
Yeah, there was a revival of it not so many years ago. Extraordinary, still holds up. And of course, the spelling bee, which was
the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, and that's him with a cast, not a Broadway cast. He made a lot of money off this show. This was his success.
Yeah, this was his Phantom of the Opera, so to speak. I had drinks with him once. I met up with him. He was charming, a little bit grumpy. I think I'm allowed to say that, but he was genuine, and he told me he made more money from Spelling Bee than any other.
Absolutely, but it was such a brilliant, and of course is survived by his life partner, Arthur Salvador. Paul Rudnick, who the famous playwright and humorist, said Bill was gleefully honest. When I'd ask his opinion of a less than noteworthy production, he'd shout, "It was terrible." He said only Bill could make even rage somehow delightful.
I can agree with that. My husband, Bruce Sussman, is a Drama Desk winning playwright and has had a Broadway show and a West End show. He was friends with Bill, and I think people knew he was sick, but I don't think people knew he was.
Well,
sick.
he had issues all his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a musical about it, A New Brain, about the conditions that he had. So, and he was also a writing teacher, and he nurtured an awful lot of people into this business. And so
you met up with him yourself once.
he was a viewer of the show, and he said, "Let's have lunch," he said to Anime. So we did, and he was very funny and very grumpy and, and just delightful.
And I can absolutely confirm that. Do you know how I got on his radar, not from all the different places I work or where I write from this show? He sought me on this show and found me on social media, and we went out and had a drink.
Really? And he was a guest here on the show. But we're going to show you his 1992 acceptance speech for the Tony Award for Original Score for Falsettos.
Don't do this. You're making my mother cry in Boston. Wow. Barry and Fran Weisler were the only producers stupid enough to do this show, and the only ones smart enough to make it work. And I just thank you so much. Lapine is Lapine, and sui generis. Michael Sarabin, finally, after 12 years, I can say publicly, you're divine. You're divine. Andre Bishop and Ira Weitzman nurtured the show at Playwrights Horizons. Thank you. Wait, there's more. Wait, I'm sorry. 30 seconds. Arthur Salvador, what more can I say? Graziella Danielle, yes, thank you for doing it. And I have a wonderful family, wonderful friends. I love everyone in this audience, and I'm a miserable person, so thank you.
He brought us such joy. We're going to deeply miss him. And, we reported in 2023 a production of Spelling Bee, in Ohio, a school at a high school. They canceled it because one of the characters has a gay parent. It's just like, but this is the kind, he lived long enough to see that kind of stuff.
The good
but
news
it's
here is,
performed all over the place.
And the good news is we will have his work forever.
Yes, we will. And, we're going to bring you another video now by Senator Chris Murphy. All you've heard about this week is this insane tariff scheme that is crushing, exploding the world economy. And Chris Murphy, who's the senator from Connecticut, is on this, and he explains it in a way you're not hearing on most of the news shows.
Trump's tariffs that he announced last night, it's not economic policy, it's not trade policy. It's a political weapon designed to collapse our democracy. Last night, when he released his tariff plan, economists were really confused because they looked at the numbers, they looked at the formula. It made absolutely no sense as economic policy, as a means to try to bring jobs back to the United States. That's because it's not trade policy. It's not economic policy. The tariffs are another tool for President Trump to try to compel pledges of loyalty, this time from companies and industries in the United States. You have to understand that everything Donald Trump is doing is in service of staying in power forever, either him or his family or his handpicked successors. He's trying to destroy our democracy. That's why he is going law firm by law firm, university by university, to try to bully them into pledging loyalty to him. The tariffs are going to be used to do the same thing to private industry. Why are the tariffs so widespread? So that every business in this country has to come to the White House and make an agreement with Trump in which he gives them tariff relief in exchange for a pledge of political loyalty. What could that pledge look like? Well, maybe they agree to champion his economic policy publicly. Maybe they agree to make contributions to his political campaign. Maybe they agree to police their employees to make sure that nobody that works for that company works for the political opposition. What he's doing to universities and law firms, he's now about to use tariffs to do to companies in this country. That is the game. That is the story. It doesn't make sense as economic policy because it isn't economic policy. It's an attempt to try to collapse the economy so that all these companies have to come to him to make pledges of political loyalty. That, frankly, makes it much more insidious, much more dangerous. But if we know what he's doing, if we understand the objective, that makes it a lot easier for the public to fight back.
And that's why we're out in the streets, because we're getting run over here, and it's awful.
More people should be covering that speech. For the last few days, I've been reading the Wall Street Journal and smart newspapers to try and understand it, and nobody could explain it, and he just did. That's what's going on.
So,
okay, let's do a happy story here. Reality star T.S. Madison has opened a home for formerly incarcerated Black trans women in Atlanta. Residents will receive stable housing, job assistance, support, gender-affirming healthcare, nutrition. And so she has put this all together, has become very successful from reality TV, now wants to give back, and is doing so in Atlanta.
That's great. And my hero of the week is a New York State Education Department official. We got a picture of him. His name is Daniel Morton Bentley. So, every education department, every school system got a thing. You got to certify you're not doing DEI anymore, or we're cutting off your federal funds. And he wrote back and said, DEI? Is there a law against it? I don't think there is. We're not filling out this form. He says, go pound sand, basically. And what a hero to say that to them. And the mayor of Chicago did the same thing.
Hero. And the more people that do it, the less scary it will get to do it.
That's right.
Being the first is the hardest.
The other thing this guy pointed out, in your first administration, Betsy DeVos, who was a horrible person, though, told the staff that she was the education secretary, that diversity and inclusion are the cornerstones of high organizational performance. So this is a shift. You're confusing us. We will not be certifying what we do here. We got a nice decision from a federal judge getting the Associated Press back in the White House.
They were kicked out of the White House for not agreeing to call the Gulf of America. Now they have not backed down the AP.
Right,
however,
because it is the Gulf of Mexico. It's insane.
It's the Gulf
and then they just installed your Congress, which is useless. Or not Congress, but Senate in this case, confirmed this Harmeet Dillon as the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She's an anti-gay bigot. She's always been against women's reproductive rights, and this is who's going to run the department
on purpose. I think it's trolling us. I think this is to
always. Every single one of them is a fox in the chicken coop. Okay.
That's a good way of putting it. So, lesbian former police officer has been awarded $10 million for harassment and discrimination. Ashley Cummings, a former National City police officer, has been awarded $10 million. She's an out lesbian, and she said that she was denied promotion many, many times because of her sexual orientation and the fact that she is a woman. She described in the lawsuit the toxic culture within the police department, and now $10 million later.
Which is like half the budget of the police department.
Right, nothing to them, but an enormous amount of money for her, and good for her for standing up.
So it's not just Trump, it's 19 Republican attorneys general who have called on Costco to end its DEI policies and are, but because the shareholders at Costco voted to uphold DEI. And of course, Trump is also continuing to go after Governor Janet Mills of Maine because, you had the head of Social Security, who's destroying Social Security, writes and says, cancel their contracts, that anything to do with Maine. I mean, this is nuts. I mean, you're gonna destroy the state because she's standing up for trans rights, and the president doesn't like it. And then we've got a transgender Army Reserve officer in Kentucky who is speaking out, appearing in uniform on the Trans Day of Visibility. Her name is Christina Winters, and she's taking a brave risk here.
Take one. My name is Christina Winters, and I am a captain in the Army Reserve. And I want you to know that you are seen, you are loved, you're appreciated. I want you to know not to give up. I want you to notice all the people in this video that are not only proud to be who they are, but they celebrate it. Now, the current administration wants us to not be visible. They want us to be invisible. They want to remove us from society. They want to ensure that we are disenfranchised, that we no longer have a voice, we no longer have the rights to even enter any space that is safe. They want to remove us from our homes. They want to remove us from our jobs. And it is disheartening times right now. And I know how easy it is to want to give up. I know the struggle, but at least for today, I want everybody to celebrate who they are. Don't hide yourselves and be proud, unknowingly so. I want you to post pictures. I want you to let everybody know your story. I want everybody to see who you are and for everybody to understand that we will not be a race. We are here and we're here to stay.
To be trans is human. That's what she says. And very brave to do it in uniform.
In uniform.
And much braver than the law firms that are caving into him, the universities that are caving into him, the corporations that are caving into him, and all the Republican members of Congress who are caving into him when we need them to stand up to save the world at this point.
Save the world. No, it's extraordinarily brave and a very, very powerful video. And I think messages like this really matter.
Okay.
And that's going to reach somebody who needs to hear that.
I hope so. And of course, you know, what else did Trump do this week? He issued a proclamation on child abuse. We're all against child abuse. But of course, he said that the most powerful safeguard against child abuse is a stable stable family with loving parents. And there's no substitute for a strong mother and father, which is a dig at us.
That's the point.
And of course, the single parent families. And he went on to write that gender ideology is one of the most prevalent forms of child abuse. I mean, this triggers violence when you talk like this. It's truly horrific. Chase Strangio at the ACLU said, every perpetrator who inflicts violence on children, Trump said, will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. It's just, I mean, you know, he wants the traditional white Christian patriarchal family structure.
Only that and
Right.
nothing else.
Right.
And he's saying it there. Hey, this is a sort of an interesting story too, that women's sports bars are set to quadruple around the country in 2025. So at the moment,
Women's sports
bars that are dedicated to women's sports. So at the moment, there's about 6. By the end of the year, it's going to be 24. And so they say this is because of the massive increase in viewership now for women's sports. And so the bars are going to...
So they're not
follow them
lesbian
along.
specific, they're
Not
just
lesbian,
women.
Women's sports bar, men are welcome too.
Oh,
but if
men are welcome.
They are welcome. This is to celebrate women's sports.
Okay, that's great.
We're
And it
talking
is
about-
very popular. Let's talk about the 60 Minutes thing that was on this week, which is about the way, you know, again, we have lost due process in this country, and the Supreme Court is not stopping it. They say everybody's entitled to it, but they're not stopping what happened to all those people who were shipped to that prison in El Salvador.
Yeah.
No matter what they did, everybody deserves due process. And of course, they scooped up a lot of people who weren't. So
Yeah, and the fact that the Supreme Court has paused this for the moment is outrageous. I think a lot of people
paused
thought,
it instead of dealing with it.
instead of dealing with it, kick the can down the road, so to speak. 60 Minutes did this report. It was several minutes long, and you know there was a lot of backlash. If you have to remember, Trump is currently suing CBS, and CBS is trying to sell the company, and so internally people are being very, very careful, very cautious. But 60 Minutes was bold and took the story to where the truth was and the real reporting, and was unafraid to follow that.
And of course, they included in this, and you don't hear enough about them, the gay makeup artist, Andre Hernandez Romero, pleading with the guards at El Salvador's prison.
As they shave his head.
That's his head there. And then we have another shot of him, being subjugated. Everybody's being subjugated and beaten in this thing. And he kept saying, I'm innocent, I'm gay. He was crying as his head was shaved. And, again, Trump has invoked the Alien Enemies Act, and this is a picture of what this guy looks like in real life, and when he's a sweet guy. The photographer who took the pictures in the prison said he was being slapped every time he would speak up. He was crying out for his mother. That really touched me. They've been stripped of their hair, their clothes. It's like your life just ceased to exist. You're just a person in white clothes now. And he was watching people disappear. This is outrageous no matter where it takes place, under whatever circumstances. I don't care if they're gang members. Of course, if they've committed crimes, you can deport people. You can lock them up if they've committed crimes. But, usually, the law is you deport people to their own countries, their old countries, not an El Salvador prison. But he can send any of us there.
It's a really important report to watch. I think it's up on YouTube. 60 Minutes Uncovered those
I am
pictures.
going to link to it in our email. And if you want to be on our email list, go to gayusatv.org and sign up for our weekly email. And we give you extras like this. Yes. The Supreme Court has let Trump suspend grants to teachers, $65 million in teacher training grants that were to promote diversity. Diversity is a dirty word.
That's the dirty word. That's the word that they're focused on.
It fails to serve the best interests of the United States. What is in the best interest of the United States? To be isolated and hated around the world? Nobody's going to want to do business with us. They keep saying, everybody has to come to us. We're the richest. People are saying, I don't want to deal with you anymore. We're going to work out a new system where you don't count. And maybe the dollar doesn't even count.
Absolutely. The Gay Bears have boycotted a Texas campground because they banned trans men. So an all Texas-based, all-male, clothing optional campground, it's called Grizzly Pines, is under fire for a policy that excludes transgender men. Now the Houston Bears, who normally have their annual benefit there, is saying, we no longer want any part of this. We will find another place to do our benefit, to take our business, standing up for one another, an important thing to be doing.
Yeah. It was nice to see 500 law firms back Perkins Coie, I think it's COIE, in his fight, and their fight with Trump. 500 law firms backed him up. None of the top 20 law firms in the country have backed him. No. The guy who drafted the brief said, whatever short-term advantage an administration may gain from exercising power in this way, the rule of law cannot long endure in the climate of fear that such actions create. The rule of law.
It's a very, very
and then the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has implemented a cruel and unnecessary anti-trans policy, another executive order from Trump, which says there's only two sexes. And then what they're doing to Social Security. I'm a Social Security recipient, and we're all worried about getting our next check. I've already heard about people who've like missed checks or had them come late because they're screwing with the system. Well, and what the other thing they're doing is that they're trying to claw back money that they think was improperly given to people. And if that happens sometimes through a clerical error, but they've gone after a 61-year-old AIDS activist who was getting SSI in San Francisco. They want $200,000 and they want it now. They used to, when they had to claw back money, said, we'll take 10% over time. And no, this is what's happening.
And they're making it so difficult. I think the phone lines have been removed. It's very difficult to get anybody on the phone.
How can this be happening? Come on. There were a lot of old people out at the demonstrations that we went to. Everybody should have been out there, given what's happening to Social Security. Okay. We told you that we expected, out gay Representative Chris Pappas, the Democrat of New Hampshire, is launching his seat for the open Senate seat from New Hampshire, being vacated next year by Senator Jeanne Shaheen. You can count on me to lead the charge to confront this administration's self-dealing billionaires and extreme politicians who threaten our future, Chris said.
I like him. He's fearless. I was watching some videos of him, watching some of his speeches. He's a very articulate, talented young guy. I think he's got a bright future.
Okay. Now, we told you the story about Nancy Mace.
Yes, let me tell you. So charges have been dropped against the activist who was accused of a violent handshake by Representative Nancy Mace. So federal prosecutors have dropped the charges against the man who was accused by Nancy Mace of physically assaulting her. Let me explain. So allegedly, he shook her hand in a way that she thought was abusive. Those charges have now thankfully been dropped.
There were witnesses, and they said, no, he didn't. And
there was video.
She was upset with him because he was standing up for trans rights. And I don't think she liked touching him.
That's what it was about.
His name was James McIntyre, a foster youth advocate from Illinois. In a fencing match at the University of Maryland, a cisgender woman was disqualified because she said, I'm not going to play this trans fencer, a trans fencer. I'm not a woman. I'm not going to do it. So they said, look, and Martina Navratilova, was on the side of the person who didn't want to fight. But USA Fencing has rules, and they have. Look, all sports are coming to different conclusions about how to deal with trans in sports. But in this case, they're saying, here are the rules. You don't want to play, you're disqualified.
Because of all those different rules and for many other reasons, the Trump administration have formed a task force to target trans inclusion into sports and restrooms. The Department of Education and Justice announced the joint task force to enforce Trump's executive order banning transgender women and girls from, quote, female sports and restrooms.
Right. And so then we come to the situation because of the Trump orders in Virginia, where a trans girl, Eliza Munshi, who was a senior at Falls Church High School there, she was told, okay, you've been playing on the girls' team all these years. You've been a girl all these years. Now you're a boy, and you got to play on the boys' team. So she plays on the boys' team. And of course, she goes into a competition and she throws the discus or something 41 feet. The average boys throw it 74 feet. So it's not like she has any kind of advantages because she was once a boy. And then good on John Oliver, huh? He, on his show last week tonight on HBO, he did a deep dive into the issue of trans women in women's sports. And we are going to link to this in our email. He was so thorough, of course, as usual, funny.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And, I wish we could show it, but it's just too long a piece. But I'm so glad that he gave so much of network TV time to see this. It's extraordinary. You can see it. We will link to it. I have some friends who work for him and they say he's great. I know a lot of people in television and they don't always say that.
And he has a trans staffer as well.
He does.
Who
this is very important to him. You could tell it. It's very important.
Right. But his basic point was, all right, there are some issues here. We can discuss them, but basically, you just hate trans people.
That's basically
that's what's going on here.
Do you know what his favorite show is on television? He's talked about during the pandemic. He watched episodes and episodes of one TV show, and it got him through the pandemic. RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, interesting. And by the way, Trump has ordered the NIH to study gender transition regret. This is what they want to, blow up. In Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp signed a Religious Freedom Act. We've heard about these kinds of laws. Basically, they are excuses to discriminate. I have a religious reason for not wanting to work with you or something like that. He says, the governor, he won't let Georgia become a hate state, but that is what he has opened the door to do.
Senator Tommy Tuberville is back in the news after falsely claiming that entire men's team are transitioning to compete in women's sports. So he's asserting without any evidence that the entire men's teams are transitioning to gain an advantage in women's sports. We should point out that fewer than 10 transgender women are currently competing at the college level in the entire country.
Actually, it's zero now because the NCAA has stopped it.
Right.
So, I mean, it was 10. That's what the NCAA testified to.
Right.
There are maybe 10 out of 50,000 or whatever, and now it's none.
Zero.
So it's not. This is that is not even a problem. Of course, with all these crackdowns, Iowa State students in Ames, Iowa, carried a coffin marching to the free speech zone there because the Iowa legislature stripped the Civil Rights Code in Iowa of protections based on gender identity, and they've lost their center.
This is very effective. That's a very powerful images. It reminded me of the coffins during the height of the AIDS epidemic and just how powerful these images are around the world.
They were throwing the ashes of people on the White House lawn. You'd probably get shot doing that now.
Right.
So don't try this at home. Red state legislatures, this is the season, are piling on with anti-LGBTQ legislation. In Ohio, Republican legislators have officially, in the budget, they put these in the budget so they didn't have to have hearings on them. So they're only going to recognize two sexes. They're banning pride flags from government buildings. They're restricting the availability of LGBTQ books in public libraries, etc. Now, again, in terms of the books and everything else, I always remind the kids out there and everybody else, it's all online. They can't ban thought.
They can't ban thought. So federal prosecutors are seeking a 7-year prison sentence for George Santos. Remember George Santos?
Oh, God, what happened to him?
For fraud and identity theft. So federal prosecutors are recommending 7 years.
This was this gay Republican who was even the Republicans went against him and they expelled him from Congress.
They did.
So now he faces
7 years. He thinks it should be a lot more lenient.
Well, of course.
He's hoping for 2 years. However, the DOJ cite the severity and the scope of his crimes here. He could go down a long time. I should point out too, the last time that I did this show, I co-hosted with Andy, I got a text from George. So he must, I swear, I didn't say
George watches the show.
I didn't say that, but it was too much of a coincidence that shortly after appearing on the show, I got a text from him. So if you're watching, George, hello.
George, when are you going to repent of your Republicanism? All right. In Orange County, California, in the little town of Aliso Viejo, they tried to ban this guy. He's called MAGA Mike on the city council.
Of course he is.
He tried to ban pride flags on city property. So 13 speakers testified in favor of that. 164 were against, including the NFL star Chris Cluey, who stands up for us all the time. The ban failed, ultimately 5-0.
Good. Mary Trump is revealing the family history behind Donald Trump's contempt for the military. This is really interesting. So a clinical psychologist, Mary Trump, who is disclosing that her uncle's disdain for the military is actually shaped by his father, Fred. Fred was a man who, according to Mary, only cared about money, making money. And because military service does not generate any wealth, the president sees it as worthless and weak.
But Fred Trump was also a bona fide member of the KKK.
You better believe it.
He was arrested in Queens at a demonstration there in the 1920s, and an awful person.
Mary Trump has a book out too. I'm reading it at the moment. It came out a little while ago. She's an extraordinary character and very, very smart, and the maybe the closest within the family that is actually standing up and speaking out.
And a lesbian. Yes. You're going to tell us about Ashley Cummins.
Ashley Cummins. I think we did Ashley already at the top of the show. We did Ashley Cummins.
We did. Sorry.
$10 million.
I'm behind. YouTube doesn't allow hate speech toward a number of groups, but they just changed their rules. Hate speech against someone's gender identity and expression, which was barred, is now been removed, and you can do it. They say that hate speech over someone based on sex, gender, or sexual orientation is still barred, but the critics say gender is very different than gender identity and expression. All right. In labor news,
let's go ahead.
New York's Lesbian and Gay Community Center has recognized a union there. They didn't even put up a fight.
That's great. I've not been to that center in years. When was the last time you went?
I'm going. Oh, I'm going to be going this week. But it was for a memorial service for Troy Masters, so it's mostly for memorial services. There are a lot of 12-step programs there as well, and other things, of course. A Texas teacher, Rosie Sandry, was hounded out of her classroom. She's transgender. She put some kind of a picture of herself up. So she was gone after by libs of TikTok, and Nancy Mason, all those people. And she basically had to resign. In New York City, trans woman Cammie Woodman was expelled from the Tennis League Network. A transgender tennis player is calling on the city's Human Rights Commission and Parks Department to investigate the amateur league because she wasn't allowed to play in the league, and we have anti-discrimination laws here. In Autaugoville, Alabama, an attempted carjacking left a black trans woman dead and her brother hospitalized. Her name was Katori Kai Cynthia Banks. It's an ugly story. Okay. Ted McCarrick, who this was the cardinal in the Catholic Church, who was, who they expelled him because he used to molest seminarians, boys, all this kind of stuff. He was a big favorite of Pope John Paul II there, and they knew about stuff about him. They didn't get rid of him because he raised so much money. Oh. Now I have to say that when they had the big conference on abuse in 2002, I covered it in Dallas. We weren't allowed to talk to the bishops unless we wrote a note and they said, okay, I'll talk to you. But he would come out into the press room. He was always out there talking. He wanted to talk to the press. And he was the guy behind the scenes who was, screwing everybody. There's going to be a memorial service for Dr. Joe Sonnabend, the big AIDS doctor, friend of mine, and a great leader, on Saturday, April 12th at 2:30 at the Judson Memorial Church on Washington Square South. I will be there for that. Now let's do some international
news. So Russia has banned Elton John's AIDS Foundation, accusing it of undermining traditional values. So Russia's general prosecutor is banning Elton John's AIDS Foundation, which has raised hundreds of millions of dollars, claiming that it aims to degradate the Russian value system and society. Elton John has not responded yet, but critics are saying this is just part of a larger authoritarian push to erase gay people
completely
from Russia. But it's so. I saw Elton John a couple of days ago. He's promoting a new album with Brandy, and he's still full of life and still full of passion. And his greatest achievement, he said, after his children and his husband, is the money that he has raised through this extraordinary
And he's played Russia a lot,
he has played Russia.
But not anymore. And more than 1.2 million people in Russia have HIV, which is the highest per capita rate in Europe.
Highest, but he does have a new friend.
And they have a chronic shortage of medications.
They do.
For HIV there.
And one little bit, I think, of good news on Elton John is he does have a new friend, or an old friend that now is a new friend. He kissed and made up with Madonna. So Madonna went backstage at Saturday Night Live, and she really went to let him have it. She went there to tell him off, and she walked in and he said, "Forgive me." And she melted, and they're friends again. And I'm told now there might be a duet.
Is it going to stick?
I don't know. Who knows?
Bad news from Trinidad and Tobago there in the Caribbean. Their Court of Appeal has reinstated the colonial-era laws banning same-sex intimacy. They rolled them back in 2018, and now they want them back. See, this is happening around the world, where, inspired by the right-wing Trump, we're going to be bad again.
We're going to be bad again. Greece has proposed a surrogacy ban for gay men. So Greece's Justice Minister announced a proposal to ban surrogacy across the platform for men. People are pushing back about this in Greece. I'm not sure it's going to pass. I spoke to some friends of mine who live in Greece, but they want to ban men.
Because they had made a lot of progress there. They did same-sex marriage.
I think it's what you just said, though, that now they have permission from the United States to have all these awful policies back.
All right. Some AIDS and health news. So the CDC, at the time when the world is down to a single drug that can reliably cure gonorrhea, something you should be concerned about, the United States has shuttered the country's premier sexual transmitted diseases laboratory, leaving experts aghast and fearful of what lies ahead. The STD lab at the Centers for Disease Control, which was a leading player worldwide on this stuff, was among the targets of slashing by the DOJ and all that stuff. So now all 28 full-time employees of the lab were fired. I mean, this is going to leave us all unsafe. I mean, look what's happening with measles, and that scumbucket RFK Jr. can barely bring himself to say, yeah, maybe you should get a vaccine, instead of saying we're out there, we're getting everybody vaccinated.
Right.
He won't say that. Right. He won't do it. We're not saying it should be mandatory, but you've got to when it's spreading like wildfire.
500, 2 children are dead.
You've got to have a sense of urgency about getting people vaccinated. Instead of taking vitamin A pills.
Yeah, and if you don't have a sense of urgency, if the government,
right,
doesn't have a sense of urgency, then the population won't either. People need to know this is very important and to get that vaccination.
Well, and of course, it's been a bloodbath at the CDC. It's affected workers in departments from the National Center for Injury Prevention and Health, the Division of HIV Prevention, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, the Division of Environmental Health and Science and Practice. You're on your own is their message, basically. You're on your own. We're not going to do anything to protect you. It's just sick.
The Trump administration has slashed over $125 million in LGBTQ health research. So the National Institute of Health has terminated more than 270 grants related to LGBTQ health, estimated to be worth around $125 million now in unspent funding.
And the way they justify these things is, based that they think it's DEI because it includes gays. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. And this includes research into reducing rates of HIV and other STIs. Such studies have also been canceled if they include trans people as a risk group. It just goes on. It's extremely depressing, and we're not stopping it. And the Congress isn't stopping it. And a lot of these programs were funded by the Congress. And then now the Supreme Court says, well, maybe they gave you the money, but if the president wants to get rid of it, he's the president.
That's what they're saying.
So it's terrible.
And no one's fighting back. We're fighting back.
And some of the leaders of the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, who were associated with Tony Fauci, they got letters saying, you can take a post in Native American or Alaskan health services or leave. And this includes Fauci's wife. These are people who are working on very big programs. And that doesn't mean that these other posts are not important. But of course, these people were experts in other fields. Dr. Jean Marazzo, who took over as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases after Fauci departed, got the offer. She was in charge of this thing. Now just go work and,
it's deliberate. It's not a coincidence. It's not being disrespectful to the places where they are being sent. This is on purpose.
Fauci's wife, Christine Grady, was the top bioethicist at the NIH, and she got these letters. And then we just learned about the death of this guy, King Holmes. Even though I worked in the field, I have to say I was not familiar with him. 87 years old, he's died. He destigmatized the study of sexually transmitted infections way back in the 60s and 70s. He made it a field that, because people didn't want to talk about it. That's how AIDS got out of control. I remember in the beginning, no one wanted to talk about, anal sex, oral sex, what you had to talk about in order to tell people this is how you get infected. Nobody wanted to talk about it on TV or anything else. So he was the kind of guy who did this stuff way back in the 70s.
An absolute hero, a hero out there first. Will be dearly missed.
His first book, written with Jennifer Ware, was titled How to Have Intercourse Without Getting Screwed in 1976. So it was very disarming and he spoke very, and he, helped establish a multidisciplinary clinic in Seattle in the 80s during the AIDS crisis. In addition to opening STI and HIV clinics in Seattle, he helped start a national surveillance system for gonorrhea, identifying at-risk populations. His HIV research took him to sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. So, a great hero.
Hero.
Okay. Entertainment news.
Entertainment, Andy. What should we go first? So we do first. Chapel Roan is celebrating queer culture within the country music world. So I think a lot of people don't appreciate how gay, how queer the country music world is. She has a new single out, The Giver, and it's full of banjo players, fiddles, lesbian innuendos in it. And she's praising the often overlooked gay lesbian contributions to country music, particularly from backup singers and touring musicians. So there's not that many country artists that are out and proud. However, there are a lot of people behind the scenes in country music. And she said, which I thought was hilarious, she said, country music is incredibly camp.
Well, the guy who wrote Shucked, I mean, tell me if I can,
Yes.
I'm not calling his name to mind, but I mean, he was out gay and
Yes.
he wrote many
Yes.
country hits.
Yes. And of course, maybe not out gay, but our friend Dolly Parton, who has been an ally of ours forever.
Yes, who lost her husband recently. A great new heartfelt play to recommend at the New York Theater Workshop, Becoming Eve, based on the memoir by transgender Rabbi Abby Chava Stein about her coming out to her Hasidic rabbi father. That's what the play is about. And it's by Emil Weinstein. It stars non-binary there, Tommy Dorfman as Chava, and West Wing veteran Richard Schiff as her father. You won't recognize him with his long beard, but the play mostly centering on Chava's coming out in a meeting that is mediated by a reform rabbi played by Brandon Aronowitz, and then Chava's mother is played by the great musical star Judy Kuhn. So what a cast!
What a cast! What a great story!
Now,
You loved it.
There's a lot of bravery on display in the characters and I would say in the performances. Though Chava insists in the play, she's not being brave, she's just being herself. So don't come expecting a happy ending, but instead a searingly honest portrayal of a conservative religious family working through dealing with the realities of trans life. And just special kudos to the puppeteers who bring Chava as a child to life as Dorfman stands in the background speaking the lines. And so it's not to be missed. It's at the Abram Arts Center on Grand Street, and we will link to more information about it in our email.
I haven't seen it yet, but now I want to. Gayle King is facing backlash at CBS for using an anti-gay slur on TV. Let me explain. So she was
used the F word.
She did use the F word. She was interviewing out comedian Mateo Lane, who's very, very funny, and Gayle quoted back to Mateo one of his jokes that used that word. People were outraged. Gayle has not commented on this. I spoke to several people within CBS who say she's an absolute ally. She has our back, and so we shouldn't be too worried about
she said
this.
When she said it, and it's a variation of a slur on gay people, on gay men. She said, "I'm going to get in trouble for this."
She knew she was getting in trouble. She was quoting the comedian,
but everybody was yucking it up on the set.
He enjoyed it. Mateo
he did.
laughed about it. Other gay comedians have come forward saying how funny it was to see it. So I think Gayle's okay here, but there is some backlash out there for Gayle King.
And tell us about your friend Leah Salonga.
Leah Salonga, we're seeing her back on Broadway. So she opened, I think last night, a couple of nights ago, in Songtimes, a new review, Old Friends, and now she is coming forward.
With Bernadette Peters.
Bernadette Peters, rave reviews, New York Times critics pick, and now she's coming forward supporting her trans son, saying that visibility is really, really important, and you meet your kids wherever they are, and that's what being a good parent is all about.
Yes. As a parent, I want my child to feel safe and strong and ready to conquer the world on their own terms. Sometimes I feel alone, but I'm not. It does really help to have people in your corner. Nick, her son, said, Nick is following in his mother's footsteps, is going to play Jack in a production of Into the Woods in the Philippines, where the family lives part-time. So good for them.
Good for them.
And then I saw Glengarry Glen Ross now on Broadway. This is an early play by the loathsome David Mamet. But what's he trying to tell us here? In real life, Mamet spews hatred against male teachers, calling them all pedophiles. He said that. But in Glengarry Glen Ross, one of his main grifting characters, Richard Roma, played by the Oscar-winning Kieran Culkin, tells someone he's trying to sell worthless real estate to, "You think you're queer? I'm going to tell you something. We're all queer." So this is the way he likes to talk. Another favorite word of these vile characters is the vulgar term for someone who performs fellatio on another. The show has a star-studded cast at the Palace Theater, and I have to say comedian Bill Burr is especially funny and adept at spewing the obscenities as Dave. The play was written in '83 in the early years of the Reagan era, which marked the beginning of the drift away from American liberalism. A play cannot compete, however, with the thuggery on display out of Washington every day.
Does it hold up? Did they try and move it to the modern era, or is it still set in the 80s?
I don't think there was really an attempt to modernize it, no.
It is what it is. Amber Ruffin is skewering the media for both side-ism. So she was going to be the comedian at the White House Correspondent Dinner. She got cancelled. She went on her friend Seth Meyers' show and talked about the false equivalency here and how it really annoys her. So the head of the White House Correspondent Association, Eugene Daniels, himself gay, said that the removal was to avoid non-partisan division.
So now there's no reason to watch the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And that was under pressure from the Trump people. The White House correspondents are pathetic. They didn't stand up for the AP reporter. They all should have walked out. Oh, they signed a letter. Oh, you shouldn't exclude them, but they kept going to the press conferences. They have to stick together. They're a useless organization.
It seems that way.
It's pathetic. And I'll link to her video.
It's very funny.
On the CNN show.
Yes.
What's it called?
It's a late night comedy show on CNN.
Yes.
I don't remember.
It's fantastic.
It's very good.
She is so funny.
Yes.
And she basically was saying, I'm not sorry I got canned by this. If I did it and I did what they wanted me to do, I would be a POS. I'm not allowed to say that on this show. She said, she's so funny.
She's very funny.
She's so funny. She's an out lesbian.
Would have been great.
And Billy Porter's out gay. He hosted the Olivier Awards over the weekend. This is the London equivalent of the Tonys. And he's also taken over what he calls his dream role as the MC in the London production of Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club through May 24th, with Marisha Wallace and Sally Bowles at the Playhouse Theatre.
He's ripping up London. Friends of mine have seen him. They absolutely love him. We have a story on the American production of Cabaret. Orville Peck is dazzling audiences on Broadway without his signature mask. So if you know him as an out-country star, he always wears his mask. Very few people have seen him without the mask. However, if you get a ticket to Cabaret, you're going to actually see his face. I hear he's fantastic.
I'm actually seeing it in a couple of weeks.
Andy, that's wonderful.
They always get me in there late.
I'm
seeing it on the 22nd. I'm sorry.
Are you already booked? I think that's booked. Is it Anne?
No, Anne, not Anne.
It's not Anne.
Anne. Anne turns me down a lot.
Is it a
she
friend?
Doesn't really like to go to the theater.
Is it a friend or a
much.
date? Who are you going with?
It's my oldest friend. I've known him since 1959.
I'm happy to let him have my ticket.
1959.
He deserves it. Have a great time. I want to see it. We also have a really lovely story here. A friend of mine. Last minute. Daniel Nordicchio. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I just know him as Daniel. He owns the Red Eye. He now has been hired to take over the Carlisle's book-in for Pride Week. So he has worked with Liza Minnelli, Alan Cumming, tons of celebrities, Lady Gaga, Margaret Cho, Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, Christine Ebersole. Now the Carlisle have reached out to this fantastic out gay nightlife entrepreneur, and he's going to be booking that week at Pride. Get a ticket.
Got anything else?
We have finally, before we go, a Real Housewife producer claims a gay producer that he was fired over his OnlyFans. So Patrick McDonald, who used to be an assistant on a show that I worked on, he's a very nice guy, has been working on the Real Housewives. He started an OnlyFans page and now he's been fired.
And we're out of time. We'll see. Rob will be back next week and Ann will be back eventually. Thanks for watching.